Germany's food crisis during the First World War remains one of the most debated topics among historians. Some believe that severe food shortages and widespread starvation were the main reasons Germany ultimately lost the war. According to this view, hunger fueled revolutionary movements, weakened public morale, and contributed to the collapse of the Kaiser's government. Others argue that the worst effects of starvation came after the armistice, as the German Revolution of 1918 to 1919 further disrupted food distribution. Regardless of which interpretation is correct, there is little doubt that the Allied naval blockade had a devastating impact on Germany, affecting both soldiers at the front and civilians at home. Food was once a symbol of comfort for German soldiers. At the beginning of the war, a typical soldier could receive up to 4,500 calories per day. Daily meals often included sausage, fresh bread, potatoes, butter or lard, and sometimes even tobacco, alcohol, coffee, wine, or beer. These generous rations reflected Germany's confidence that the conflict would be short and victorious. However, everything changed after Britain imposed a powerful naval blockade in August 1914. Thanks to its dominant navy and strategic control of the North Sea, Britain gradually cut Germany off from overseas trade. By 1915, most maritime commerce with Germany had been effectively stopped. France also blockaded the Adriatic Sea, preventing supplies from reaching Austria-Hungary through its ports. Before the war, Germany depended heavily on imported food. It purchased large quantities of wheat from countries such as Canada, Russia, Romania, and the United States. As the war expanded, Germany found itself fighting nearly all of these nations, destroying the trade network it had relied upon for years. Even worse, more than half of Germany's exports before the war had gone to Britain, France, and Russia, meaning both imports and exports collapsed. The Allied powers also worked hard to prevent neutral countries from trading with Germany. Nations such as the Netherlands were encouraged to sell their goods to Britain instead, often receiving prices well above market value. Germany did manage to import some American products through Sweden, but these goods became extremely expensive because Swedish traders sold them at enormous profits. Britain's economic strategy proved highly effective. Instead of relying only on military force, it often purchased valuable cargo from neutral ships, ensuring those supplies never reached Germany. German submarines attempted to stop Allied trade by sinking merchant ships, but Britain's combination of naval power, diplomacy, and financial influence ultimately proved far more successful. Part 2: Germany's food crisis deepens. As the war dragged on, Germany's food situation grew steadily worse. Military leaders had expected a quick victory under the Schlieffen Plan, believing France would be defeated rapidly before Germany turned its full attention to Russia. Because Germany produced nearly 80% of its own food before the war, officials assumed that any shortages could easily be covered by supplies taken from occupied territories. Instead, the conflict became a long and exhausting struggle that severely disrupted both agriculture and trade. The war placed enormous pressure on German farms. Horses that had once been used for plowing fields were taken by the army for military service. Nitrogen, which farmers depended on to produce fertilizer, was redirected to the production of explosives and ammunition. At the same time, millions of farm workers were drafted into the military, leaving too few people to harvest crops. Poor weather during several growing seasons only made matters worse, causing harvests to shrink year after year. By 1917, food had become increasingly scarce for soldiers serving on the front lines. Meat appeared in only a fraction of their meals, while overall rations were dramatically reduced. As the war entered its final year in 1918, butter, cheese, and fresh meat had become rare luxuries. Soldiers stationed behind the front struggled just as much, often finding it nearly impossible to buy or obtain additional food. Families tried to support their loved ones by sending food parcels from home, but even these packages became smaller and less frequent because civilians themselves were facing severe shortages. In Germany's largest cities, public war kitchens were established to provide basic meals, yet many people survived on as little as 1,000 calories per day. Hunger spread rapidly throughout the country, leading to food riots, looting, and growing public frustration. Similar scenes also appeared in cities such as Vienna and Budapest, showing that the entire Central Powers alliance was suffering from the same crisis. 3. The Turnip Winter and the fight against hunger. Germany's food rationing system soon began to fail. Government attempts to control agricultural production often created unexpected problems. Many farmers chose to grow crops that were not regulated by official price controls, hoping to earn more money. As a result, food production became increasingly unpredictable, and shortages continued to grow. The crisis reached its worst point during the winter of 1916 to 1917, a period that became known as the Turnip Winter. After the potato harvest failed, millions of Germans were forced to replace their usual meals with Swedish turnips, a vegetable that had previously been used mainly as animal feed. For many families, turnips became breakfast, lunch, and dinner, symbolizing the desperate conditions facing the nation. To cope with the growing shortage, Germany introduced a wide range of ersatz, or substitute, products. Coffee was made from roasted acorns or beet flour instead of real coffee beans. Bread, sausages, and many other everyday foods were mixed with plant fibers, fillers, and sometimes even sawdust to stretch limited supplies. While these substitutes helped food last longer, they provided little